Hey y'all, welcome back. And for today's purposes, when I say welcome back, I mean welcome back to the year 2013. It's kind of sad that our politics can't move anywhere other than between these two modes of operation, where when Blue Man in office, the biggest thing neckbeards online can find to complain about is little fucking Cartoon Network ad campaigns. I wish we could find a way to move past that political whiplash, but that's not what today's video is about. I just wanted to hop on to give some quick thoughts to add to the discourse about a Cartoon Network ad that got dropped, and more particularly, really bad faith responses I saw from Tim Pool, which is not to say he's alone, just that he's the certainly largest media figure that is representative of a type of person that's all over YouTube these days, and there's plenty of content creators making videos just like it. So for the sake of focusing in on somebody who I'm assuming is representative of the whole to one extent or another, we're going to talk about Tim Pool. So for anyone who's unaware, it seems Cartoon Network, about a week ago now, but the discourse was really popping off yesterday, I saw, dropped a little video about being anti-racist using, of course, the Steven Universe characters, which are infamous for causing many a sleepless night for right-wing chuds. So, to give you the lowdown, we're going to watch this video, we're going to look at some of the responses, and I'm going to give my thoughts on where I think people are getting lost. So, let's go.
Colorblind, this is our game, because everyone's the same. Everybody join our circle, doesn't matter if you're white or black
or purple. What the? Whoa. Hold up a minute here. Ugh, who wrote this? I think it kind of does matter that I'm purple. I mean, I'm purple because I'm literally an alien.
Well, I'm not an alien, but it definitely matters to me that I'm black.
Yeah, it makes a difference that I'm white. I know the two of us get treated very differently.
I just think it's messed up to compare me being an alien to you two being different races. You're both human. You're totally biologically the same. Adding purple people into a lesson about human racism makes no sense.
Yeah, that is pretty weird. I think people like the black, white, or purple thing because adding a fantasy race in there helps distract from the actual racism black people have to deal with.
Right. My experience with anti-black racism is really specific. Other people of color experience other forms of racism too, but you won't see any of that if you don't see color.
Dude, so this entire public service announcement could be a ploy to avoid talking about racism altogether. Hey, can we get a rewrite where we appreciate each other without erasing what makes each of us different?
Okay, but it's gonna add a couple hours to the shoot.
I can
My
make it work.
speaker's open.
You were rolling just now, weren't you? Can't we just slap some graphics on this and call it a day?
Okay, I gotta be completely honest here. Going back again to the whole this is 2013 politics just redone. I hadn't seen the full video. I expected to watch it and to cringe, but then just also be upset with the right-wing response. Like, I expected it to be like the way that like those old man-spreading videos, it's like, yeah, that's not representative of my politics personally, but these people, but these right-wing chuds are taking it too far or whatever. This wasn't actually too bad. I think it does a really succinct job of covering all the bases, and I think it especially makes the response particularly frustrating. They explicitly point out, let's see if I can pull it up.
Yeah, it makes a difference that I'm white. I know the two of us get treated very differently.
I'm gonna be a diction blowhard for a second here. She said we're treated differently, okay? Not we're born different, not our skull shapes suggest that one of us deserves to be an underclass, She specifically said we're treated differently. She is not being racist. She is talking about how people interact with these different races, which is a very different thing than being racist, but we'll get into that. I suppose we can have the conversation about like how much big words is too much for a kid to understand, but this is one of the better ones I can think of. I like that it starts out kind of satirizing the whole, I'm purple, so we're all the same. And then they pull away from that and they go, no, we are the same, but just your framework of like purple alien is a little bit odd. And then it goes on to explain like, oh, I experience things that are a little bit different from you. And then the little girl goes, yeah, that's right. We need to appreciate you and your history and the fact that you go through an experience that is, unfortunately, because of societal pressures, defined by your skin color. I'm actually shocked that it is as fine as it is. But anyways, we're not here to talk about how fine this is. We're here to talk about how much Tim Pool doesn't understand what he's talking about. So these couple of tweets here come from a Know Nothing thread. Let's start off with the first one here. Cartoon Network goes full alt-right. Not even remotely true. And obviously this image right here, which is telling that it's this image and not necessarily the video in of itself. This image is drawing a lot of attention and people are really focusing in on seeing color, being anti-racist, and assuming that that's some sort of contradiction. And then we see here some user I'm not familiar with. That's not what alt-right is, Tim. Alt-right want white people to have a racial awakening. The PSA has a white girl demanding we see her white experience. God, this is such a bad faith argument. Alt-right people, what we would commonly recognize as racists, see hierarchies, see differences in outcomes, and assume that it's natural. And yes, they want a racial awakening. But the little girl, let's go back and see if she said, demanded we see her white experience.
Well, I'm not an alien, but it definitely matters to me that I'm black.
Yeah, it makes a difference that I'm white. I know the two of us get treated very differently.
Oh my God. The PSA has a white girl demanding we see her white experience. She literally just says,
yeah, it makes a difference that I'm white.
It makes a difference that I'm white because I don't go through what she goes through. That is not a call to recognize a hierarchy that is justified. It's a call to recognizing a hierarchy that is specifically unjust. And people like Tim Pool are fundamentally opposed to recognizing that. I agree with it. I just can't tell. It feels so baseless that it's just a ploy to not understand things. You share the same ideology with the alt-right, but you don't want to admit it. Again, Mr. Understander has logged on. This is the perfect tweet right here. Nazis want to genocide me because they think that I'm inherently less human than them. Me, a leftist, wants to address objectively provable systemic issues that POC face. You, these are the same. Methinks you don't know what anti-racism is, not seeing color. See, here we go. This is the crux. We could talk about Tim Pool all we want, but there are, as far as I'm concerned, this is just some sort of normal guy who have the same opinion, and that's something I want to unpack. So yeah, I think a lot of intentional misrepresentation of ideas from media figures like Tim Pool leads some people like Jaden to assume that there's some sort of contradiction between seeing color and anti-racism. And I think a really interesting way to explore that distinction is to explore how people might respond to this particular quote from Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. We're all familiar with this quote. It's not only the only line you'll ever hear from the speech, it's probably the only line you'll ever hear a conservative bring up of Martin Luther King, period. But in specific, as it relates to this conversation about what it means to be anti-racist and to see color, it seems to give a good faith approach to regular people, though to be fair, again, I think media figures are largely approaching anti-racist conversations in bad faith. To give a good faith interpretation, I think some people look at this quote, and particularly when it comes to the word judged, they take that as almost a very neutral word. That is to say, they read, "They will not be judged by the color of their skin," almost as analogous to, "I dream that my children will not be perceived for the color of the skin," like that they won't be recognized by it at all. To be in a post-racial society for them then would be for people to just not acknowledge it. Not that the systemic things tied to racism are abolished, just that we all stop thinking about it. Whereas to me, and I think to a lot of leftists or a lot of anti-racists, the word judged is very clearly a negative connotation, and more specifically doesn't have to come from people, it could come from systems of power. That is to say, this line would more so, to me, be read like, they will not be negatively affected by the color of their skin, which, if we use that as the goal of anti-racism, is a completely different question as to whether or not we've achieved anti-racism, which the answer would be we haven't, and what to do about it. And I think this pretty directly, again, goes into this conversation we're having about Cartoon Network here. This person correctly points out that these people don't seem to quite understand what anti-racism is, and to the mass of people, the regulars who agree with the bad faith media figures, they operate off the assumption that not seeing color, not recognizing somebody, their race or their nationality, is anti-racism, not the abolition of systems that continue to, in a negative connotation, judge people of color, but just that we just say, it's almost like speaking it into existence, like racism will be over, the bad things associated with racism will be over when we wipe our hands clean of it by saying, no, it's done now, stop talking, it's over, racism's done, you can't talk about it, it's real. Why? Because we thought it away. Through the power of the human intellect, we just stopped thinking about races, and racism abolished immediately. So I guess to try to wrap this up and put a conclusion to the little bit of a rant we've got going today, I think it's really important to, again, not with media figures who are operating bad faith, but with regular folk who are just perhaps ill-informed on what proper definitions of anti-racism look like, which again, I think this little video here handles pretty well. I would be curious to know what results people could get using the framework here of different interpretations of the word judged to kind of enlighten people, because for me, I think it's a really eye-opening definition to kind of work my way through. Like, I've had this kind of thought in my head about different ways to look at the word judged for a few months now, and it really helped me see it's like, okay, yeah, it's really weird to look at this sentence or discussions of anti-racism broadly and assume that the absence of judgment means something as neutral as the absence of perception, when clearly it's talking about negative judgments, which there are still systemic biases for. So yeah, that's about all my thoughts on this. I'm sure the discourse will explode in a couple of days, and there will be wild other hot takes to respond to, maybe Charlie Kirk or some such will come out that this Cartoon Network ad is actually Nazi propaganda, and that will just completely date the content of this video in a few hours' time. But for now, I hope that this little exercise here about looking at different ways to discuss the word judged helps people out. So with that, thanks for watching, everybody. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to toss me one of them likes and subscribe down below. Make sure to click the little bell and set the notifications to all so you can know the exact nanosecond I release my next video. Special shout out to all my lovely anti-racist patrons, like those whose names are currently on screen. On top of generously supporting me as I pump out content like the video you saw today, patrons get access to exclusive content as well as early versions of content, like rough edits of every video I make and behind the scenes footage. So be sure to follow me over on Patreon if you want access to all those extra little goodies. Make sure to share this video on whichever social medias you frequent, it really helps the channel out and I greatly appreciate it. Also be sure to follow me on twitter.com because I am known to have a good joke occasionally. Thanks much, and I'll see you next time.